Okay, now I'm going to go over the MB3 Woodbury fire. You can see Mr. MB3 down here in the corner. And remember, Daniel Alexander Canning caught one of these same craft above the Notre Dame Cathedral, because we're going to go over that here in a moment as well. But it seemed the perfectly appropriate time to recover this. And for those of you that have seen this already, I assure you, you have not absorbed this. This black dot craft is what Mr. MB3 is pointing at over his shoulder when he's trying to bring your attention to it, and it is so glaringly obvious. He even throws it into inverted mode here in a second. Watch. Here's the black dot craft, and he throws it into inverted mode to try to show you. Why would he do that? Right there. He's pointing over his shoulder, saying, look, back there, you see it? And by the way, the original is in the description of this slideshow. You go in the description and you can get the original from Mr. MB3 of the Woodbury fire. And in that video, he's pointing over his shoulder saying, right there, over my shoulder, you see it? You see it right there over my shoulder? Yeah, it's a giant freaking smoke cloud. Of course we can see it. Why would he even throw it into inverted mode if all there was to see was a smoke cloud? He's trying to show you. And when we zoom into this, it shows very similar results as the black dot craft over Pleasant Grove that I zoomed into and contrasted and referred to as plasma-powered Thunderbirds, except this is even greater. Because there's so much symmetrical design in here, there is zero chance that it's not intelligently designed craft. Now you try go find a spot in the sky somewhere and zoom in and run some contrast adjustments. I might have to turn the lighting down a little bit here. Hold on. Yeah, I think that might be a little better. So the video in the description, titled MB3 Woodbury Fire, has the original in it. Now you go try and find a dot in the sky somewhere and zoom in on it and run your contrast, and then zoom in some more and run some more contrast. See what you come up with. But the symmetrical, repetitive design we're about to see... Oh, and by the way, let me rewind it just a sec. At this point, you can clearly see that it is a triangle, and you can even see the light reflecting off of two edges of it at certain points in there. I have to keep this camera pointed down so it'll focus on the tree there, so it doesn't go out of focus. My point is to show you that that is clearly visible, a triangular craft, and MB3 shows you triangle craft all the time. You think he didn't see that? You think he's not pointing over his shoulder saying, look, right there over my shoulder, so you'll see that? Or you think he's really just pointing at the smoke? So from now on, when I tell you MB3 shows you things but doesn't point it out to you, he allows you to see it if you can, if you will, if you choose to. Because your eyes can only see what the mind can conceive, and your mind can only conceive that which you are capable of emotionally processing. And if you're incapable of emotionally processing something, your mind will not be able to conceive it, and therefore your eyes can't even see it. And this is what James True refers to as your aperture. So MB3 doesn't force you to see it. If you can see it, there you go. If not, well, maybe next time. So as we zoom into that craft, and he throws it in inverted mode there for you, he's trying to get you to see it, if you choose to. If you're capable of emotionally processing this, then your mind is capable of conceiving it, and your eyes will be capable of seeing it. But that's why he's not going to force anyone through this process. It's not for everyone. The fact that I drive by these plasma fires every day, all day, and millions and millions and millions and millions of other people drive by the same exact spots that I do, yet they don't see it, proves this is a consciousness filtration device and mechanism and process that we're in the midst of. Now, watch what this triangular craft over MB3 turns into, and then I'm going to show you one over Joe Imbriano in a video that he titled Stairway in the Sky, where he points his camera at the sky and tells you, man, there's some crap going on up there. There's nothing natural about this. And he says that's right over a military base. So over a military base is one of these craft hovering, and it gives Joe Imbriano the impression, turn your camera up, Joe. Show him what's up here, Joe. Show him this ain't natural, Joe. And he receives the impression, But he didn't see the black dot craft in his video. You see the symmetrical design, the repetitive geometric patterns here? Is there any chance that that is not intelligently designed craft? Look at all the highly detailed ridges up here. We're going to zoom in on that. Let's give it a pause right there. When you zoom in on something, you normally lose clarity. On these, for whatever reason, I can zoom way in 3 or 4 or 5 times and increase and still have such resolution. As we zoom in on this, not only are you going to notice these staircase ridges, right along here you'll notice dotted dashed lines. We're going to zoom in on that here in just a second. The same thing happens at the Notre Dame Cathedral. When I zoom in, I think there's 8 videos titled 1 through 8. Each one is a series of images where I zoom in a little further and contrast a little further, and zoom in a little further and contrast a little further. Let's give it a, cancel. Yeah, let's just look right there at where it stops. Equal distance spacing between these dotted lines along the edge. Equal distance spacing between these dotted lines that are exactly the same as these dotted lines. If your heart is capable of processing this, and this is the reason many people cannot see the transformations that are going on in our world around us, because they have not had a transformation within themselves. And that is why they are incapable of emotionally processing and mentally conceiving, and therefore being able to even visually perceive everything that's happening around us. They drive right by it and say, oh yeah, I think there was a forest fire there, wasn't there? And they can't even see. That looks nothing like fire. It looks much more like a bomb hit. But they're like, no, yeah, I think there was a fire. Yeah, there's a fire. Not a knock on them, but yeah, kind of a knock on them. Because if you can't see that shit, there's something wrong with you. And it's internally. I'm going to talk about how the Knights of Shame is the song by AWOLNATION, Knights of Shame. And right at the beginning of this mask ritual to separate us in this consciousness filtration process, everyone tuned in to the fact that the mask has something to do with shame. People with higher amounts of shame are more likely to wear the mask. People with lower amounts of shame are less likely to wear the mask. And in that song called Knights of Shame, it says, dance, baby, dance like the world is ending. And that's what it's singing about. It's basically singing about the lead up to 2012. But here we are in 2021, and all of those changes are happening. And there's a reason it's called Knights of Shame. And the song I'm referring to is spelled K-N-I-G-H-T-S, Knights of Shame, here to slay the shame right out of you. And that's exactly what this process is doing, separating those with more shame from those with less shame. Though a friend of mine who commented online says her parents took the vax and tell her, you're just an asshole who doesn't care about anyone besides yourself. According to them, this is a consciousness filtration device that separates people who are just an asshole and care less about others than those who are so caring about others. They're cloaking their cowardice and their shame that caused them to go get the vax in some virtue, lofty notion of principle. It's because you're an asshole who doesn't care about people. The reason I got the vax is because I care about people. This is a consciousness filtration device, all right? Hold on. Okay, so the original is linked in the description. What I want to show you is when we come back to the sky again, you'll see Fullerton Informer right here on the bottom corner, which is how you know this is directly out, there it is, which is how you know this is directly out of Joe's video. And I zoom in on the black dot and get virtually the same geometric pattern that repeats the same intelligently designed geometric patterns and repetitive equal distant ridges. That shows me, and Joe says this is right over a military base. where he received the impulse to turn his camera to the sky and talk about how there's nothing natural about these skies. So now we have 13 of them in Pleasant Grove, where I called them plasma-powered Thunderbirds. At least 13 in that one place that are all stationary. And then I showed you at least one that's moving. And throughout the rest of that video, plasma-powered Thunderbirds, there's others zipping in and out here and there. And so this technique works. Or it was working there for a while, and I was able to extract things that cannot be explained. But a lot of people want to explain it away. So let's just look at this, and I'll shut up for a minute, and we'll focus on this for a second. The equal distant ridges down here. And when we get up here, all these little tiny ridges, you should not be able to see that great of clarity, of detail, when you're zoomed this far into an image. Like that little black dot that I zoomed into, how does that gain clarity? How does that gain detail as I zoom further and further in? When usually, when you zoom further and further into an image, you lose clarity and detail. These pretty much work the exact opposite way. So remember, this technique that I've demonstrated works over and over and over and over and over, multiple times, from the Santilli telescope, from KC Kidd, where I showed you the airborne aircraft carriers parked 2x2 at the end of runways, and all of the machinery in the sky around them, that is the airborne aircraft carrier that they are on, to the 13 and more plasma-powered Thunderbirds in Pleasant Grove, to the UAP over military base that Joe Imbriano, Fullerton Informer, took, to the one that we just looked at behind Mr. MB3 in the Woodbury fire. And you remember all those times, and there's more. There's more that I titled like Floating Fortress, City in the Sky, where I just took a screenshot out of my own video that I took straight out my front door or down here, down the road a piece, ran these zooms and contrasts, and again, repeatedly shown there's more there than meets the eye. Remember that when I'm about to show you the Notre Dame Cathedral, because it's more than your mind can conceive, because it's more than your heart can process. You can't emotionally process it. You can't mentally conceive it. If you can't do those two things, you literally cannot visually see it. Hold on, we're not picking, for some reason it's not coming through as well. Okay, I have a hard time fitting this in the camera, kind of, sort of, but, okay, what's going on? Why is that just all blurred out in pure white? You can watch the original linked in the description. There's much greater clarity, because right here, this is all just going to shit on me, because I'm trying to film phone to phone, and trying to adjust the brightness of the one phone in order to get it to focus on the other without adjusting the sensors and whatnot. As you can see, this is going not too well. Watch the original linked in the description. And this will be just one more of many that reproduces this same pattern over and over and over. And just started out as a little black dot in the sky. You can see there's Joe Imbriano's Fullerton Informer logo right there. So this is just coming from a little black dot in the sky that I zoomed in on. Why does it keep going back and forth from size? It's like I can't get it to tilt the camera sideways, and it wants to go vertical, and then so I got to fit it into the other phone at a horizontal, and that's why it's just all going to crap. So you can watch the original linked in the description. We zoom in on it, it turns to that. The holographic, like the hall of mirrors, fractal pattern, an image within an image within an image, and the same repetitive outline profile around the edges, and then these ridges where it develops greater clarity as you zoom further in. I'm just going to let this play through. Not even going to touch it again. This will just be the last time. You guys can watch this one if you want. I want to move on to the cathedral, because I've reproduced this enough times. That's what scientifically provable means. Means it's not just a one-off, but you can repeat it and come up with the same results again and again. And that's what proves something is a working model or a working theory. Because half this stuff that you're seeing around the edges where it's just white, there's actually stuff there. You just can't see it because the nature of filming phone to phone is not going well for me right now. But if you want to see what there is to see, I guess this one you'll have to click the link in the description and watch for yourself. And that's the difference between sheepdogging and trying to nip at people's heels and chase them into the truth, or just letting them follow your lead if they choose to. I'm not going to sheepdog no more. But this is what those little black craft look like. This is a profile. You want to catch up on some of this? 10th level Jedi College part 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. You see the triangular craft? Those are from the airborne aircraft carrier. You see the fins on the back of each one of them? A lot of people have seen this already. This, I think this was from Leslie's Care Bear condominium. Either way, I have extracted these images multiple times from multiple sources. Those are good places to go for catch-up. Once you know that this process is a proven method, you can look at this stuff and see that that looks like the engine room, mechanical structures. This is one that I just zoomed into a cloud over at Leslie's in her video and extracted what there was to be able to be seen. There's one here where I zoom into images of the sun, and as you can see just from the thumbnail, the Hall of Mirrors effect, the equal distant ridges. Check it out for yourself. This one, how to train your plasma-powered Thunderbird. Mr. MB3, someone sent him a video of what looks like a flying dragon in the sky. They took the video out at sea, in the ocean, and this thing is hanging out up in the air with a tail and wings and a head, and I run the contrast. If you want to see it, go ahead. This is a series of these slideshows where I run the contrast and extract what there is to be seen. They're just titled 1 through 8. And number one starts out with 0 contrast added, and you can see that it's just the cathedral. They're in Paris. Unfortunately, Daniel erased his video where he shows that one of those black dot craft is clearly visible above the cathedral, right where it's getting struck on that spire on the day of the fire. But as I run through these contrasts, this starts to appear up here. Oh, there it is. There, I notice these things, and I just kind of zoom into whatever draws my attention. I'm like, hey, wait, what's that up there? Hold on. What is that? And as I add contrast, I see something start to appear right up here. And so I zoom into it. I'm like, wait, what the hell? That looks like a... What is that? Is that a snake? And is it like sitting on an egg or something? It's like guarding the portal up there. So I'm like, what is that? The hell? So then I grab another screenshot, and I can see another screenshot where I can see the portal, but the snake isn't there on top of the portal. It's either gone or airborne beside the building. And when I zoom into that portal, there are images that should not be able to be seen at all. So here's the next one where the snake is not on top of the portal, but the portal can be seen right there in the same spot. Let's just pause it for a minute. Maybe. In this image, the portal is still right there, but the snake isn't on top of it. There's something right here, like maybe that snake is airborne. You can see the snake ain't on top of that portal no more, so I think, oh cool, let's zoom into the portal, see what's there. That might be the same creature there beside it. So that was screenshot slideshow number 1, and when I first uploaded this, it uploaded perfectly where you could see the snake's head and everything. This whole image was moved down to the bottom. And after it uploaded, they, move it up so you can't quite see the cartoon snake on the front. But I still have the screenshots where they've actually allowed the thumbnail to show the full snake instead of moving it up to where you can't see it. But that was screenshot slideshow number 1, and number 2 pretty much starts off where number 1 left off. Okay? So now we can see this head. It's even got a little green eyeball right here. Head, wings, tail, the portal that it was sitting on a minute ago, and I zoom into the portal. It seems like it's kind of overloading the camera light sensor and just turning half of it bright white. But as I zoom into this portal, each screenshot receives 3 sweeps. You notice it puts it in Ken Burns effect, so it's always moving back and forth. There's a different version where I've added contrast and you can see everything much more clearly. So each one gets 3 sweeps. Right. There's a new sweep. 1, 2, 3. Now it'll go to something else. 1, 2. It's the same scene. 3, it sweeps it back at you. Now comes 4. That's a different scene. And you can still see this little portal up here. This is a 3rd version where it doesn't have the snake on top of it or hovering it beside it. And I zoom down in that portal. And what I find is what I've called the flower of life, Metatron's cube. Is it the projector of this entire holographic reality? Whatever it is, I've uncovered it using a proven method that shows that this method that I've used repeatedly is capable of doing something like seeing through the veil, seeing into another dimension. So when I say those of you that have already seen this, you may have seen it, but you haven't absorbed it. Because there's coming a time real soon when even for me, the reality here is going to set in and become much more real. Even for myself, who has personally had these firsthand experiences, it's going to become much more real even for me. Because it still seems kind of surreal, kind of bizarre, like is this really happening? Are we in the Matrix? Did someone slip me a Mickey? So here we're on slideshow number 3 where I actually start to zoom into the portal. And there's something very special about this image, the flower of life that we're about to look at. Man, that's just blasting it out to where it's just pure white. Because on all other images that I've ever ran this contrast procedure on, you can only run the contrast 2 or 3 or 4 times. And when you try it again on the 5th, 6th, and 7th time, the adjustments no longer work. Saturation, highlights, light blue, dark blue, blacks, shadows, whites, all of these have an adjustment on them. And with each time that you run the zoom and contrast and then go grab that screenshot from your gallery and do it again, each one of those adjustment bars gives you less and less effect on the photo, to where by the time you've done it 4 or 5 times, you can adjust those contrast bars from one end of the spectrum clear to the other, and very little, if any change at all, happens to the picture. It's already contrasted all the way out. This image that we're going to look at in the center of the cathedral, even after I'd ran the contrast 10, 20, 30 times, just the slightest of movement on those bars that give you the ability to adjust these different highlights and colors and saturation and stuff, a slight movement on that bar and that picture is flipping through hundreds of different levels of contrast and exposure and brightness with each one of those adjustments. That doesn't happen with any of the other images that I have ever performed this procedure on. Like I said, with the other images, you can contrast it out 2 or 3 or 4 times, and then by the time you've done that, you've reached the limit of the ability to contrast the image. They no longer have an effect. You can keep grabbing another screenshot and running the contrast, and you run the bar from one end to the other of the adjustment, and it no longer has any effect. Now what I'm going to do here is zoom into this little black square, and it's just one of many. So earlier in the screenshot slideshow, when we're back when we're zoomed out a little further, you can see a few of these different squares. It looks almost like a computer chip that you're looking at, and I just choose this one to zoom into. And as I zoom in, I go through 2 different layers of darkness where you can't even see anything, but I keep zooming and running the contrast adjustments and leaving the adjustments where I can see something, where I begin to see something. And unlocking this, it's like a combination lock that had 1 trillion combinations. And I tried going back and doing it again. I couldn't do it again. I had the eyes to see and I was led by the Spirit. And what it unlocks when you zoom into this black spot is beyond comprehension. And because people cannot emotionally process it, their mind cannot conceive it, even though I'm showing you. See this? We're zoomed. Watch, I'm going to zoom back so you can see the phone. That's going back and forth through a screenshot right now. You can just barely see anything. But I continue zooming in and contrasting until I can see something. I'm like, oh, is that something? No, wait a minute. Is that? No. Oh, there's something. That dark spot that we just went through, that was one of the screenshots that I went through. And then we see something more. Oh, let's screenshot that, zoom in further, and this is what's in there. How can this light not shine through that layer of darkness? How can I continue zooming into something that's completely black and then come up with this? Why would that light not just shine through the darkness? But when I continue zooming and contrasting and running those adjustments and trying to get them to a place where I can see something, this is what we end up seeing in there. We're on screenshot slideshow number 4. 5, 6, 7, and 8 are just this image right here contrasted out to different adjustments. And you'll notice how much fine detail along the ridges of the corner of this cube right here. Everywhere along the edges, highly detailed ridges, symmetrical patterns. Whatever we're looking at here, it is out of this world. This is screenshot slideshow number 5, where I zoom into different specific areas like this area or that area and show you how highly detailed this image is. There's a reason I call it the flower of life and Metatron's cube. 1, the location that it is and the process that I had to go to in order to extract this image. And 2, this little cube in the middle. Also, we zoomed into a little black cube earlier, if you remember, when I was saying, how the hell could this be a black area that I'm zooming into? And once I zoom in far enough, suddenly I can see light again. Suddenly I can see more images and patterns. Why wouldn't the light from those images and patterns shine through the darkness? How is there that layer of darkness that I had to zoom through in order to be able to uncover and uncloak this, whatever this is. I assure you the originals that are linked in the description are far more impressive than me trying to squeeze it in phone to phone with one of the phones vertical and the other one horizontal. But like I said, I ain't gonna sheepdog you no more. You don't want to go to the extent to have to click the link and see what there is to see yourself. You want to tell yourself, oh, I've already seen that. Show me something new. I assure you, you have not assimilated this and incorporated it into your self-image and worldview. You have not processed this. I haven't even processed this. The reality of whatever this is that we're looking at here is beyond anything anyone has ever even been able to comprehend. And it is at the root, at the base of our real world. This is more real than your everyday life. Your everyday life is a hologram, a figment of imagination, a projection, an illusion compared to whatever this is. This is a reality that overarches our daily affairs that we think of as the real world. That's why I say you have not absorbed this. You have not fully allowed yourself to receive this. And even the ridges have their own little ridges. Each one of those little tiny ridges has about 2 or 3 ridges on top of it. You need to let go of all your preconceived ideas. Lose your grip on reality in order to be able to grasp what it is that's happening here. Because everyone else is going to be in for a real rude awakening. We were given a heads up in order that it would not make our hearts fail us for fear, and in order that we might be able to transition through this period gracefully and come out the other side intact. I'm hoping being inoculated, the Fear Inoculum, that's the name of Tool's new album, Fear Inoculum. I'm hoping this has given you a bit of a fear inoculum. And instead you can have your mouth agape with awe and amazement at what we're about to see, while others tremble with fear and terror. Because we've been taken under the wing and given a very special preliminary introductory period.